You finally got it. The life, the relationship, the job that doesn't feel like a cage. And somewhere underneath the relief, something else showed up uninvited. Fear. Not fear of failing, not fear of being unhappy again. A quieter, stranger fear, the fear of losing this. You lie there at night, everything fine, and your chest tightens anyway. You catch yourself bracing, waiting for the other shoe, wondering when the good thing ends, instead of simply letting it be good. This is the part nobody warns you about. Happiness, once it arrives, can feel less like a gift and more like something to defend. You start guarding it the way you'd guard a candle in wind, cupping your hands around it, afraid to breathe too hard in case it goes out. And the strange cruelty is this: the tighter you hold it, the less you actually feel it. You're so busy protecting the joy that you forget to live inside it. There's an old idea, nearly 2,000 years old, that speaks directly into this exact moment. Not a trick, not a mindset hack, a real shift in how you relate to the good things in your life. It says something almost backwards from what you'd expect. Enjoy everything. Depend on nothing. Stay with that for a second, because it's about to change how you hold your own happiness. If you've ever felt that quiet fear right after something good finally happened to you, type "I am still here" below. Let's see how many of us recognize this. Let's slow down for a second and actually look at what's happening when you feel that fear creep in, because most people misname it. They think they're afraid of being unhappy. But that's not quite right. If you weren't happy in the first place, there'd be nothing to lose, and the fear wouldn't have anything to attach itself to. What you're actually afraid of is the loss of this specific good thing, this relationship, this sense of stability, this version of your life that finally feels right. That distinction matters more than it seems. Fear of unhappiness is abstract. Fear of losing a particular happiness is sharp, specific, and personal. It has a shape. It looks like your partner's face. It sounds like the silence after good news. It feels like watching your kids sleep and suddenly, out of nowhere, picturing a version of the world where they're not there anymore. You didn't ask for that thought. It just arrived, uninvited, the way fear always does when something finally matters to you. Here's a scene you might recognize. You're lying in bed. The day was good. Actually good, not fine, not okay, genuinely good. Maybe you laughed more than usual. Maybe someone you love said something that landed exactly right. And as you're drifting towards sleep, instead of feeling settled, you feel a small, cold thread of unease. Your mind starts running calculations it was never asked to run. What if this doesn't last? What if I lose this? What if I get used to this and then it's taken away? You didn't used to think like this. Back when things were harder, when the relationship hadn't started yet, when the job was uncertain, when stability was just a hope rather than a reality. You weren't bracing for loss the same way. There wasn't anything substantial enough yet to lose. The fear had nowhere to land. But now that you have something real, your mind has something to protect. And protection, left unchecked, quickly turns into vigilance, and vigilance quickly turns into low-grade anxiety that hums underneath even your best days. This is the part that catches people off guard. They expect happiness to feel like arrival, like finally reaching solid ground after years of uneven terrain. Instead, it often feels like standing on a ledge, beautiful view and all, suddenly aware of how far down the fall would be. The better the view, the more aware you become of the height. Psychologists sometimes call this the fear of future loss, but the Stoics were describing it long before anyone gave it that name. They noticed that human beings have a peculiar habit. We don't just enjoy good things, we quietly start treating them as guaranteed. We stop experiencing them as gifts and start experiencing them as facts of life, as though the relationship, the health, the financial stability were permanent fixtures rather than temporary circumstances that happen to be ours right now. And once something becomes a fact in your mind rather than a gift, losing it doesn't just feel sad, it feels like a violation, like reality broke a promise it never actually made. Think about how differently you'd feel about a borrowed car versus one you'd been told, falsely, that you owned outright. If the borrowed car got scratched, you'd be annoyed, maybe, but you'd accept it. It was never fully yours to begin with. But if you believed with total certainty that the car was permanently yours, a single scratch would feel like an injustice. Same scratch, same car. Completely different emotional experience because the belief about ownership changed everything. This is exactly what happens with happiness. The moment you start believing your good circumstances are owed to you, that you've earned permanence, that you deserve for things to stay this way, every signal of potential change starts to feel threatening. A bad mood in your partner becomes evidence of impending loss. A slow month at work becomes a sign the stability is cracking. Your nervous system starts treating ordinary fluctuations, the kind that exist in literally every human life, as warnings of catastrophe. What's actually happening here is a quiet merger between two things that were never supposed to be the same thing: joy and attachment. Joy is what you feel when something good is present. Attachment is the belief that the good thing must remain present indefinitely, or else something has gone wrong. Somewhere along the way, without your permission, these two got fused together in your mind, and now you can't seem to feel one without bracing for the loss of the other. This fusion is so common that most people assume it's simply what happiness feels like, the joy, plus the underlying dread of its expiration date, packaged together as a single emotional experience. But that's not actually what happiness has to feel like. That dread is not a built-in feature of joy. It's something added on top, something learned, something the mind picked up along the way without realizing there was ever another option. And once you can see that fusion clearly, once you can separate "I feel joy" from "I am terrified of losing this joy," you've already taken the first real step toward understanding why the Stoics built an entire framework around this exact problem. They weren't trying to talk people out of feeling joy. They were trying to free joy from its attachment to permanence, so people could actually experience their good fortune without quietly grieving it in advance. That's where we're headed next, into the roots of why we grip so hard onto things that were never ours to keep in the first place. There's a story the Stoic philosopher Seneca returns to again and again in his letters, and it's worth sitting with for a moment. He compares good fortune to a loan, not a gift. Fortune, he says, doesn't give us things. She lends them: wealth, relationships, health, status, and she can call in that loan whenever she chooses, on no particular schedule, with no obligation to explain herself. The people who suffer most, in his view, aren't the ones who lose things. They're the ones who forgot the loan was ever a loan in the first place. This single idea, if you actually let it land, restructures almost everything about how fear operates inside happiness. Because most of us walk through life functioning as if our circumstances are owned outright. Your health belongs to you. Your relationship belongs to you. Your stability, your reputation, your sense of who you are. These feel like permanent possessions, deeded and signed rather than what they actually are, temporary arrangements that fortune happens to be allowing right now. Epictetus, another Stoic who spent part of his life enslaved before becoming a teacher of free men, built his entire philosophy around a related distinction. He divided everything in existence into two categories: things within your control and things outside your control. Your judgments, your responses, your character, your effort. These are yours, genuinely, permanently yours, in a way nothing external can ever be. But your health, your reputation, other people's feelings toward you, the length of your life, the survival of the people you love, none of this is actually yours to command. You can influence it, you can hope for it, but you cannot guarantee it, no matter how much you want to. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Most of our happiness is built almost entirely on the second category, the things outside our control. We're happy because of a relationship, a job, a level of health, a financial situation. All external, all by Epictetus's definition, fundamentally not ours to keep. And yet we treat these external circumstances as if they were as solid and permanent as our own character, building our entire emotional foundation on ground that was never meant to hold that kind of weight. This is why the gripping happens. It's not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It's a natural, almost automatic response to mistaking something borrowed for something owned. If you genuinely believed, deep in your body, that this relationship, this job, this stretch of good health was on loan rather than guaranteed, you would relate to it completely differently. You'd still love it. You might love it more, actually, but you wouldn't feel that low hum of dread, because dread only shows up when we expect something to be permanent and suspect, somewhere in the back of our mind, that it might not be. Think about how this shows up practically. The person who got the relationship they always wanted starts checking their partner's phone. Not because anything is wrong, but because the fear of loss needs somewhere to go, and surveillance feels like control. The person who finally landed financial stability starts obsessively checking their bank balance multiple times a day, as if watching the number will keep it from changing. The person whose health finally stabilized after a hard year starts treating every minor symptom as a potential collapse, scanning their body for betrayal. None of these behaviors come from a place of weakness or irrationality. They come from a deeply human, deeply understandable confusion, mistaking a loan for a possession. And once you believe something is yours to keep, any threat to it, real or imagined, feels like an attack on your identity, not just an inconvenience to your circumstances. Marcus Aurelius, writing to himself in what we now call his Meditations, kept returning to a similar thought from a different angle. He'd remind himself, almost like a daily practice, that everything he loved, his family, his position, his own body, was on loan from nature and would eventually be returned, not as a depressing thought, as a clarifying one. He wasn't trying to make himself sad in advance. He was trying to stay honest about what was actually his, so that when the time came to let something go, it wouldn't feel like betrayal. It would feel like the natural conclusion of something that was always temporary. There's a particular kind of relief in this reframe, even though it sounds at first like it should produce the opposite. If you stop believing your happiness is guaranteed, you'd expect to feel more anxious, not less. But that's not how it actually works in practice. The anxiety isn't coming from the impermanence itself. Impermanence has always been true, whether you acknowledge it or not. The anxiety is coming from the gap between what's actually true and what you believe to be true. Close that gap, and you don't add fear. You remove the friction that was creating it. This is the part most people skip past too quickly, so it's worth slowing down here. Acknowledging impermanence is not the same as expecting disaster. The Stoics weren't pessimists rehearsing tragedy for fun. They were realists trying to relate accurately to the nature of things, because inaccurate beliefs about permanence are precisely what generate unnecessary suffering. You don't need to believe something will last forever in order to enjoy it today. In fact, the belief that it must last forever is often what stops you from fully enjoying it right now, because part of your attention is always reserved for monitoring the threat of its departure. So, when you find yourself gripping, checking, scanning, bracing, calculating, what you're actually witnessing is your own mind confusing a loan for a deed. It's not malfunctioning. It's doing exactly what minds do when they believe ownership where there was only ever borrowed time. The good news, and it really is good news, is that this confusion can be corrected. Not through force, not through pretending you don't care, but through a clearer, steadier relationship with what was always true. You were never promised any of this. You were given it temporarily. And what you do with that temporary gift is the only part that's actually up to you. That clarity is where we're headed next, into what this grip actually costs you while you're living inside it. Picture a birthday party. Not a big one, a kid's birthday, the kind with a slightly lopsided cake and balloons taped to a wall that's already starting to peel. The parent is there, camera in hand, watching their child blow out the candles. And on the surface, everything about this scene says happy. The lighting is warm, the child is laughing, the whole room smells like sugar and relief. But look closer at the parent's face for a second. There's something underneath the smile, a kind of preemptive ache. Because somewhere in the middle of this moment, a thought slipped in uninvited. They're growing up so fast. And that thought, innocent as it sounds, dragged something else along with it. A flicker of grief for a moment that hasn't even finished happening yet. The parent is here, physically, completely present in the room. But part of their attention has already left to go mourn the ending of something that is, right now, still very much alive. This is what clinging actually costs you, and it's rarely talked about because it doesn't look like suffering from the outside. It looks like love. It looks like a parent who cares deeply about their child, treasuring every moment, and in a sense, that's exactly what it is. But there's a tax hidden inside that love, a tax that pulls you out of the present moment and deposits you into an imagined future where the good thing is already gone. You can't be fully present in a moment while simultaneously grieving its eventual loss. The two states compete for the same limited resource, your attention, and attention, unlike money, can't be borrowed from tomorrow. It only exists right now, in this exact moment, and every bit of it spent worrying about a future loss is attention that didn't go toward actually experiencing the thing you're afraid of losing. This shows up far beyond birthday parties. It shows up in relationships where someone finally finds a partner who treats them well, and instead of simply enjoying that, part of their mind is constantly auditing the relationship for warning signs, treating every quiet moment as a potential prelude to disaster. It shows up in career success, where someone finally reaches a level of stability they worked years for, and instead of feeling settled, they feel a strange compulsion to keep proving they deserve it, as if relaxing into the success might cause it to evaporate. It shows up in health too, maybe most painfully. Someone recovers from a difficult illness, finally feels like themselves again, and instead of simply living, they spend an enormous amount of mental energy monitoring their body for signs of relapse. Every headache becomes a potential symptom. Every tired afternoon becomes a possible warning sign. The relief of recovery gets quietly replaced by a new, exhausting vigilance, a kind of permanent on-edge state that never fully allows the relief to settle. Here's the part that makes this so insidious. None of these people are doing anything wrong. They're not failing at gratitude. They're not lacking appreciation for what they have. In fact, it's usually the opposite. People who grip the hardest are often the ones who care the most, who understand most acutely just how good they have it, and who therefore feel the most to lose. The depth of the love is precisely what's fueling the depth of the fear. This is the cruel irony sitting at the center of so much modern unhappiness. The people most capable of recognizing a good thing are often the same people least capable of simply enjoying it, because their recognition of its value triggers an immediate, almost reflexive fear of its absence. Gratitude, instead of opening them up to the moment, ends up closing them off into a kind of defensive crouch. And the tragedy compounds itself the longer it continues, because the good thing, the relationship, the health, the stability, doesn't actually last forever in its current form. Nothing does. Circumstances shift, people age, situations evolve. And if you spent the entire duration of that good period bracing for its end instead of living inside it, you end up experiencing a strange double loss. You lose the thing eventually, the way everyone eventually loses everything. And you lose the actual experience of having had it fully while it was here. The fear didn't protect you from anything. It just charged you rent on a house you were already going to have to leave one day anyway. This is what the Stoics understood with startling clarity, centuries before modern psychology gave it clinical names like anticipatory grief or hypervigilance. They recognized that the human mind has a tendency to prepay for losses that haven't happened yet, and in doing so, to miss the only thing that was ever actually available to experience, the present moment, exactly as it is, while it's still here. The good news, and this is where the path forward starts to open up, is that this pattern isn't fixed. It's learned, which means it can be unlearned. The fusion between joy and dread that we talked about earlier isn't a permanent feature of being human. It's a habit of mind, reinforced over and over by a culture that constantly tells us to hold on tight to what we love, when the actual wisdom, the kind that's been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years, points in almost the exact opposite direction. That's where the Stoic reframe comes in. Not as a way to care less, but as the only way to actually be fully present for the things you care about most. So let's get into the first half of the principle, because it's easy to misread it if you move too quickly. Enjoy everything is not a throwaway phrase tacked onto something more serious. It's the harder half, in some ways, because it asks you to do something most people associate with carelessness. Feel the joy completely, without holding part of yourself back as insurance against future pain. Marcus Aurelius had a practice he returned to again and again throughout his meditations, and it's strange enough that most people misunderstand it on first hearing. He would deliberately picture the loss of the things he loved, his wife, his children, his own health and position, not because he wanted to feel miserable in advance, and not because he distrusted his own happiness. He did this because he noticed something true about human attention. We tend to take things for granted exactly in proportion to how reliably they show up. The sun rises every day, so almost nobody feels grateful for sunrise. A spouse comes home every evening, so eventually their presence stops registering as a gift and starts registering as background noise. By briefly imagining the absence of something good, Marcus wasn't trying to manufacture dread. He was trying to undo the numbness that familiarity creates. For a few seconds, he'd let himself feel what it would actually be like if his wife wasn't there, if his children were gone, if his health failed completely, and then he'd return to reality, to the fact that right now, none of that had happened. His wife was there. His children were alive. His health, however imperfect, was functioning. The contrast between the imagined loss and the actual presence would hit him with a kind of clarity that gratitude alone rarely produces on its own. This is worth trying yourself gently, without turning it into a performance of anxiety. Think for a moment about someone you love being gone, not in a way that spirals into panic, but just enough to feel the weight of what their presence actually means. Then open your eyes, so to speak, and notice they're still here, right now. This exact moment, the one you might have been rushing past without really inhabiting it, is the one where they're still here. That's not a small thing. That's the entire gift, delivered fresh, every single day, disguised as something ordinary. This is the engine behind enjoy everything. It's not about manufacturing artificial enthusiasm for things you don't actually feel strongly about. It's about removing the numbness that permanence thinking creates, so that the things you already love can be felt at their actual intensity, rather than the muted version your mind settles for once it assumes something will always be there. There's a particular kind of person who does this naturally, often without realizing they're practicing anything close to Stoic philosophy. You've probably met someone who's been through a serious health scare and came out the other side. Ask them how they experience an ordinary Tuesday afternoon now, compared to before. Almost universally, they'll describe something that sounds almost embarrassingly simple. The light coming through a window looks different. A cup of coffee tastes more vivid. A conversation with a friend feels weightier, more textured, less like background noise and more like an actual event worth paying attention to. What changed wasn't the coffee or the light or the friend. What changed was the assumption of permanence. Once that assumption got stripped away by a brush with mortality, the ordinary stopped being ordinary. It became visible again, the way a familiar word starts to look strange if you stare at it long enough. Except in this case, the strangeness is actually clarity. They're seeing the thing as it actually is, temporary, fragile, and therefore extraordinary, rather than the dulled-down version their mind had quietly substituted in once the threat of losing it disappeared. This is the whole point of enjoy everything. Not enjoyment as performance, not gratitude journaling as a chore you complete before bed, a genuine, full-bodied experiencing of what's actually in front of you, freed from the haze that permanence thinking throws over everything good in your life. The Stoics weren't interested in making people sadder by reminding them of impermanence. They were interested in making people more awake, because awakeness is what's required to actually enjoy something, rather than simply consume it on autopilot. Here's where it gets practical, because this isn't meant to stay abstract. Enjoying everything means letting yourself feel the full weight of a good moment while it's happening, instead of immediately calculating its expiration date. It means noticing, really noticing, the specific way your partner laughs at something only the two of you find funny, instead of mentally filing the moment away while your attention drifts toward tomorrow's responsibilities. It means tasting the meal instead of just eating it. It means actually listening to your kid's rambling story about something that happened at school, rather than nodding along while composing your grocery list in your head. None of this requires pretending that nothing bad will ever happen. That would be denial, and denial is fragile. It shatters the moment reality intrudes. What's being asked here is something sturdier, full presence, paired with honest acknowledgement that this moment, exactly as it is temporary, and that its temporariness is precisely what makes it worth your full attention right now, rather than later, rather than when things settle down, rather than some imagined future version of this moment that's somehow more secure. There's a kind of relief that comes from realizing you don't have to choose between enjoying something and acknowledging it won't last forever. Most people assume these two things are in conflict, that accepting impermanence will inevitably dampen joy. The way knowing a movie is about to end makes the final scenes feel sadder. But that's a misunderstanding of what impermanence actually does to experience. Once you stop fighting it, it doesn't dampen joy, it sharpens it. The same way a sunset feels more striking specifically because it's brief, the same way a song's final chorus often hits hardest precisely because you know it's about to end. Your happiness becomes more vivid, not less. Once you stop pretending, it comes with a permanence guarantee that was never real in the first place. This is enjoy everything in its complete form, not naive optimism, not forced positivity, a clear-eyed, fully attentive way of experiencing what's actually here, made more vivid rather than less by the honest acknowledgement that it won't always be here in this exact form. But enjoying fully is only half the equation. The other half is what makes this entire approach sustainable rather than exhausting, and that's where we're headed next, depending on nothing. Now for the half that tends to make people nervous on first hearing it. Depend on nothing sounds, at first glance, like a recipe for isolation, like a philosophy for people who've given up on caring about anything, who've built a wall around themselves so nothing can ever hurt them again. That's not what this means, and it's worth being precise here, because getting this wrong defeats the entire purpose. Depend on nothing is not care about nothing. It's not emotional withdrawal disguised as wisdom. What it actually means is far more specific. Don't make your sense of identity, your stability, your fundamental okayness dependent on something that was never within your control to begin with. You can love your partner with everything you have and still not depend on that relationship for your sense of who you are. You can pour yourself fully into your work and still not depend on its success for your basic sense of worth. The love stays. The investment stays. What changes is what you've built your foundation on. The Stoics drew a sharp line between two categories of good things, and this distinction is the key that makes the whole principle click into place. There are external goods, relationships, health, reputation, money, achievements, circumstances of every kind. And there are internal goods, character, judgment, integrity, the way you choose to respond to whatever life hands you. External goods are wonderful. The Stoics never claimed otherwise. They weren't ascetics demanding you renounce comfort or connection. But external goods share one defining feature. They are not fully under your control. They can be taken, changed, diminished, or lost, regardless of how much you want them to stay exactly as they are. Internal goods are different. Nobody can take your integrity from you unless you hand it over yourself. Nobody can strip away your capacity to respond with courage or patience or honesty, no matter what circumstances throw at you. These qualities are yours in a way that nothing external can ever be, because they don't depend on anything outside of you to exist. This is the only category of ownership that the Stoics considered real ownership, because it's the only category that can't be repossessed by fortune, circumstance, or time. Here's why this distinction matters so much for the fear we started with. If your sense of being okay, your fundamental stability as a person, is built on external goods, then every external good becomes a potential threat the moment you acquire it, because its presence is precisely what your stability now depends on. Lose the relationship, lose your foundation. Lose the job, lose your sense of worth. Lose the health, lose your peace. You've essentially built your house on a piece of land you don't own, And you can feel that instability even when nothing has gone wrong yet, because some part of you knows the land could be reclaimed at any moment. But if your sense of being okay is built on internal goods, on your own character, your own capacity to respond well to whatever happens, then external goods can come and go without threatening your foundation. You still feel their absence. You still grieve real losses. The Stoics were never claiming grief was a failure of philosophy. But the loss doesn't shatter you, because your sense of who you are was never actually housed inside the thing you lost. It was housed inside you, in the part of you that chooses how to meet whatever life brings, and that part remains intact regardless of circumstance. This is what depend on nothing actually means in practice. It means you can enjoy your relationship fully, invest in it completely, build a life around it, while your fundamental stability as a person rests somewhere else, in your own character, your own capacity to handle whatever comes, your own sense of what kind of person you're choosing to be regardless of outcome. The relationship becomes something you enjoy, rather than something you depend on for survival, and paradoxically, this makes you a better partner, not a more distant one, because you're no longer relating to your partner out of desperate need for them to complete your sense of security. You're relating to them out of genuine choice and genuine presence. The same logic applies everywhere external goods show up in your life. Enjoy the financial stability fully, work hard to maintain it, feel real gratitude for it, but don't let your basic sense of okayness depend on the number in your bank account, because numbers fluctuate and your worth as a person was never supposed to be tied to them in the first place. Enjoy your health fully, take care of it, appreciate every day it functions well, but don't let your fundamental peace depend on a body that, like everybody, will eventually change and decline. Enjoy your reputation, your achievements, your status, but don't let your core sense of self live inside other people's opinions of you, because those opinions were never yours to control and never will be. This might sound, on the surface, like it's asking you to love things less. It's actually asking the opposite. When your fundamental stability isn't riding on whether you keep something, you're free to love it without reservation, without the part of your mind that's always quietly calculating risk and preparing for loss. You can finally give a relationship, a project, a friendship, your full attention, because you're not simultaneously trying to extract a guarantee of permanence from it in exchange for your investment. There's a particular kind of freedom that shows up when you genuinely internalize this distinction, and it's hard to describe until you've felt it firsthand. It feels like loving something with your whole chest while standing on solid ground, rather than loving it while standing on a ledge. The love itself doesn't get smaller. If anything, it gets bigger, because it's no longer competing for space with fear. The fear was taking up room that could have gone entirely to the joy, and once the fear loosens its grip, there's simply more room available for the actual experience of loving and being loved, of having and appreciating, of being present rather than perpetually braced. This is the full shape of the Stoic principle, finally complete. Enjoy everything, fully, vividly, without the numbness that assumed permanence creates. Depend on nothing, meaning don't house your fundamental sense of self inside things that were never yours to permanently keep. These aren't two separate instructions pulling in different directions. They're two halves of the same insight, working together. You can only truly enjoy something once you've stopped depending on it, because dependency is what introduces the fear that dilutes joy in the first place. And once that fear is gone, what's left is something far more intense and far more sustainable than what most people call happiness. It's something closer to freedom. Let's go back to where we started. You, lying in bed, everything in your life finally good, and that strange tightness in your chest anyway. Let's revisit that moment, except this time, let's walk through it with everything we've talked about actually applied, so you can feel the difference rather than just understand it conceptually. You're lying there. The day was good, genuinely good, and the thought arrives the way it always does. What if this doesn't last? But this time, instead of letting that thought spiral into bracing, into mental calculations about how to protect what you have, you pause. You notice the thought arriving, almost like watching a weather pattern roll in, and you ask yourself a simple question. Is this thing in front of me, right now, actually here? Yes, it's here. Your person is here, breathing next to you. Your stability, whatever form it takes in your life, is here, right now, in this exact moment. The job, the health, the family, whatever it is that's been making your life feel good lately, it's present. Not guaranteed for tomorrow, not promised for next year, but undeniably completely present right now. And that presence is the only thing that was ever actually available to you in the first place. Nobody, not even the wealthiest or most secure person who has ever lived, has ever had access to anything more than right now. That's the full extent of what existence offers any of us, regardless of how much we'd like it to offer more. This realization, once it actually settles into you rather than staying as an idea you nod along with, changes the texture of the fear. The fear doesn't necessarily disappear completely. That might be expecting too much from a single insight, and the Stoics themselves spent entire lifetimes practicing this, not mastering it in a day. But the fear loosens its grip. It stops being the dominant note in the moment and becomes at most a quiet background hum that you can acknowledge without obeying. Here's what becomes available to you once that shift happens. You get to actually feel the relationship instead of just monitoring it for threats. You get to notice the specific way your partner's hand feels in yours, instead of using that same attention to scan for signs that something's wrong. You get to taste your life instead of constantly checking the expiration date stamped on it. This sounds like a small shift, almost too simple to matter, but it's the difference between a life spent bracing and a life spent actually living, and that difference adds up across years in ways that are hard to overstate. Think about what it would mean to apply enjoy everything, depend on nothing, to a single ordinary evening. You come home. Someone you love is there. Maybe dinner's not anything special, just a regular Tuesday meal, nothing photographed, nothing posted anywhere, nothing marking the occasion as significant. Under the old pattern, part of your mind might already be drifting toward tomorrow's obligations, or quietly auditing the relationship for signs of trouble, or feeling a flicker of unease about how good things have been lately, as if goodness itself were suspicious. Under this new pattern, that same evening looks different, even though nothing about the external circumstances has changed. You notice the specific way the light falls across the kitchen table. You actually hear what your partner is saying, rather than performing the motions of listening while thinking about something else. You let the ordinariness of the moment register as what it actually is. Not boring, not forgettable, but quietly, completely sufficient. This is what a life looks like, you might realize, sitting right here in a kitchen on a Tuesday with someone you love nearby. Nothing more was ever required to make a moment count. And here's the part that might surprise you most. Depending on nothing doesn't make you love this moment less. It makes you love it more completely, because you're no longer simultaneously trying to extract a guarantee from it. You're not asking the moment to promise you it'll repeat tomorrow. You're not requiring it to prove its permanence before you allow yourself to enjoy it. You're simply here, inside it, for as long as it lasts, which happens to be exactly as long as moments ever last for anyone. Right now, and then the next right now, on and on, for as long as a life continues. This is also where the relationship with fear itself starts to change. Fear of loss, in its raw form, is trying to protect you. It's not your enemy. It shows up because something matters to you, and that mattering deserves acknowledgement rather than suppression. But fear, left unexamined, tends to overstay its welcome, taking up far more space than its actual job requires. The Stoic approach isn't asking you to silence the fear or pretend it doesn't exist. It's asking you to relate to it differently, to notice it, thank it for trying to protect something you care about, and then gently set it down, because clutching it tighter has never actually prevented a single loss in the history of anyone's life. It's only ever stolen presence from the time that was still available. There's a particular kind of maturity that develops once you start practicing this, and it doesn't look like Stoicism in the popular, misunderstood sense, the stiff upper lip, emotionless caricature that gets thrown around casually. It looks more like a deep, settled warmth. People who've genuinely internalized this principle tend to love more openly, not less, because they're not bracing while they do it. They cry at the things worth crying at, celebrate the things worth celebrating, and grieve the things worth grieving, fully and without flinching, because their emotional life isn't being managed by an underlying fear of impermanence anymore. It's simply being lived. This brings us to something worth sitting with, honestly. Loss is still going to happen. Practicing enjoy everything, depend on nothing, doesn't grant you immunity from the actual losses that come with being alive. People you love will eventually be gone, in one way or another, whether through circumstance, distance, or the simple, unavoidable fact of mortality. Health will change, situations will shift. This isn't a philosophy that promises you'll never feel pain. No honest philosophy makes that promise, and any that does should be regarded with suspicion. What this philosophy actually offers is different, and in some ways more valuable. It offers you the chance to have lived fully inside the good things while they were here, rather than having spent their entire duration bracing for their departure. When the loss eventually comes, as it does for everyone, you'll grieve it as a real loss, because it was real, and because you actually let yourself love it without reservation. But you won't be grieving a moment you never actually inhabited. You won't be looking back at years of good fortune and realizing you spent them anxious instead of present, gripping instead of grateful, scanning for threats instead of simply living the life that was, for a while, genuinely yours to enjoy. This is the quiet promise hiding inside this entire principle. Not the promise of permanent happiness, because nothing can promise that, and anyone claiming otherwise is selling something. The promise is this: you get to actually have your life while you're having it. You get to feel your joy at full volume instead of muffled by preemptive grief. You get to love the people in your life without the constant background static of fear interrupting the signal. And when things change, as they always eventually do, you'll meet that change from a place of having genuinely lived the good years, rather than having merely survived them while waiting for the inevitable end. So if you're someone who finally got the thing you wanted, the relationship, the stability, the health, the peace, and you've noticed that strange fear creeping in where you expected only relief, know that this isn't a flaw in you. It's not evidence that you don't deserve what you have, or that some part of you is sabotaging your own happiness. It's simply your mind doing what minds do when they confuse a loan for a deed, when they fuse joy together with attachment without your permission. And now that you can see that fusion clearly, you have something most people never get: the chance to gently take it apart. Enjoy everything. Let the joy be as big and as full as it actually wants to be, undimmed by the haze of assumed permanence. Depend on nothing. Let your fundamental sense of being okay rest somewhere sturdier than circumstances that were never fully yours to control in the first place. These two instructions, working together, aren't asking you to care less about your life. They're asking you to finally, fully show up for it, not as someone clutching a candle in the wind, terrified of the next gust, but as someone who can hold the flame loosely, marvel at its warmth while it's here, and trust that whatever happens next, the part of you capable of loving fully will still be standing, ready to light the next flame, whatever and whenever that turns out to be. That's the whole shift. Not less love, not less joy, just less fear standing in the way of feeling either one completely. If today's video reminded you that you're allowed to enjoy your life without bracing for its end, leave a comment below. I depend on nothing. Subscribe to the Stoic mode and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. We're only beginning to build something unshakable here. Thank you for listening. Live free.